This is the Fitzy and Wippa with Kate Ritchie podcast.
Very lucky to have this man in the studio, Dr. Billy Garvey. He's a paediatrician. He's had over 20 years of experience. He specialises in children and their child development, mental health, and he's got a brand new book out. It's called 10 Things I Wish You Knew About Your Child's Mental Health. And he joins us now, Dr. Bill.
Dr. Billy.
Thank you.
Mate, it's great to have you in here. When you were in here last time, I think it was sort of late November, the parents listening were hanging off every word, and it became a battle to get on to ask you a question. So we throw it out there again today, 13 24 10. If you do have a question for Dr. Billy Garvey, by all means, give us a call. Ask Dr. Billy. He is here with us today. Mate, we're fascinated by what you do, and as parents, we analyse. I think we sometimes overanalyse our kids' behaviours. But what are the sort of the concerns and some of the main themes you're seeing with parents at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stress, I think. Stress. There's a big difference generationally now. Like, we know the influence that how we are with our kids is going to carry them through the rest of their life. But I think a lot of people feel lost in terms of, how do I do that well? How do I respond to them when they're struggling?
Yep.
What are the bits that I need to prioritise? And there's a lot of kids that are really struggling. It's actually... our wait list is actually increasing. I work at one of the biggest tertiary paediatric hospitals in the world, and our wait list is actually getting longer. I'm seeing more kids struggling now than I was back in the pandemic.
Do you know, as a parent too, and Fitz, I'm sure you've come across this, I think one of the major concerns is around communication too. So it becomes almost the parent's job to try and work out why my kid has suddenly become really quiet and not that open to talking.
Yeah.
And I think, and then you sit there sort of analysing, thinking, well, what's wrong with them? Did something happen at school? No. Did something happen with your brother? No. That's really hard for a parent, not knowing what might be going on emotionally for a child.
Yeah, the trick is you can't, especially younger kids, you can't directly ask them, because it's, as you probably both know through parenting, anytime you put pressure into something, it usually gets worse. And so trying to be calm and non-judgmental and just curious and thinking about what's changed and what's going on. But I mean, you both know this well. It's all about what you do outside of the tough times, how you build the strength of that relationship, and that unconditional trust is really important. And I think a lot of parents who have kids that are struggling really focus on it and just go, every single time I'm with this kid, I'm asking, hey, what's up? How come you're shutting down? How come you're not talking to me? How come you're so angry all the time? And the kid's like, this is the only time this is all my parent interacts with me about, is like riding me.
Yep.
Whereas the strength of the relationship is built in times of calm and joy and, love and all the stuff that matters. But it's the same as all of us, you know what I mean? Like, if every time I caught up with you, I was like hassling you about something, you'd be like, I'm not that keen now.
No, I don't want to see that guy
Billy
again. Get him out of the studio, Tom.
Well, Dr. Billy, we've started an initiative called 36 Months, which is 36 months, which is extending the age of getting onto social media for young kids from 13 to the age of 16. And would you see, in the children that you see and the families that you see, Dr. Billy, how much does social media contribute to their mental health?
Yeah, you actually framed that beautifully. So there's a great vulnerability in it. There's actually a great vulnerability in it for all of us.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know about both of you, but we've got an amazing community on social media around the podcast and now the book, because essentially I went off and did a Churchill Fellowship. How do we use media well? How do we use it to give people evidence-based information they can use to support their kids and their mental health? But we still get every so often someone who's chipping in who has a go at something I've said or has a go at something a parent has said.
Yeah.
And it's pretty awful. And I really struggle with that. And it's even harder for our kids to navigate that space and think about, someone's just bullied me or someone's showed me content that's not appropriate or that scared me or something like that. And it's really hard because there's this world now that we can't see that kids are a part of, and it makes it really difficult to navigate.
Dr. Billy, thank you for being a supporter of 36 Months, because we've used you as a sounding board and we've referenced you as well. But we've been extremely specific with 36 Months because it's such a hot topic, and that hot topic around screen time, internet, there are so many elements of that And we have said, no, we're not against mobile phones. We're not against social media as well. We're just against that age group. We're against that age group of kids aged 13 to 16 in that 36 months period and that crucial development of the young mind. You know, what's going on in that mind when they're such young teens? You know, that's such a challenging time of life, and that's what we need to protect.
Yeah, really challenging time, you know, especially when you start entering high school. That's like we see a lot of kids that struggle, you know, we're still seeing lots of kids that every week still haven't returned to school in that age bracket since the pandemic. And
Is that right?
Yeah, it's because, you know, there's a big window of potential anxiety there about they're forming who they feel about, you know, how they feel about themselves and who they are, and their peers become a bigger influence than us during that window. So they look around and go, do I fit in? Am I valued? Am I succeeding? What am I good at? Am I part of a community? Do I have peers that, you know, support me? And if some of those, you know, answers are no in their own minds, they'll often withdraw and shut down, and it's a really tough window. And I see lots of kids that are really struggling in that age bracket with mental illness and anxiety and depression.
But Billy, you're a very humble man. I'd love to ask a personal question. Have you had any kids that have come back later down the track and thanked you personally for sorting their life out? Like, how much does that mean to you?
Yeah, massively. Massively. That's why, like, I don't think what I do is that generous, because it's like it's such a rewarding job. Like, and I'll often like give a talk or something, and I'll say something, and then someone will be like, "Oh, I met you 10 years ago" or something, and I'm like, "God, I hope this is going to be a good comment after I've just been talking for an hour."
Yeah, you told me to toughen up, and then I was a loser.
Yeah, so I had it happen to me recently. Actually, it was beautiful because this mum, I was talking about little babies, and I was saying we run this clinic, and we're all about like it's you know, you decide when you're ready to leave the clinic, and we're really supportive, and we learn with you like how this baby needs to be supported and all that stuff. And then this mum is like, 9 years ago I was in that clinic, and I was like, oh my God, this is really going to prove whether. And she's like, yeah, and it was beautiful, and I got this lovely child now, and I was really struggling back then. And there's a whole team around that clinic. I can't take most of the credit.
That's you writing a song, isn't it? That's the satisfaction that you get out of your job, Dr. Bill, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys can find me a pathway to being a rock star,
you are the Taylor
I'll quit
Swift.
tomorrow.
Hey, can I ask, Dr. Billy, and I want to get on to your book as well, but from a personal one, just being a parent like anybody else listening wanting to call up, I find it tough when I'll have a kid and they'll fall over, or I don't know, they get hit with a tennis ball in the eye or something, and I don't know how generous and supportive to be, and also in my mind, I think to build resilience, should I be tougher, yeah, accepting of the moment and going, oh, mate, it stings. It doesn't hurt. It just stings now. And in a minute, it's going to be gone.
So there's a trick to that, and let's see how well I can explain it. There's two elements in that, in how you respond, and actually how you support your kids in every element. There's how warm you are and what you're demanding of them or asking of them.
Yep.
You can be cold or you can be warm. You can have low demand or you can have high demand. And there's a strong evidence of cultures all around the world in this space. If you are cold, which I know you're not, if you're cold and you have high demand, that's the like, mate, just get up, all right?
Yeah.
Sometimes
it was
nothing.
I default into that.
Yeah, but you're naturally a warm person. So it's how you are all the time, not just when they're struggling.
Sure.
So that's cold. If you are cold and don't ask much of them, that's actually neglectful. If you're warm and don't ask much of them, that's what we call permissive parenting, and that's like, some of your listeners won't know this, but that's the mum out of Mean Girls, Regina.
Right,
you know, her like, I just want to be your mate, and, you know, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that hurt. You don't need to go to school today. You don't do everything. Yeah. And then there's, you know, everything you do gets a prize. Yeah. And then there's the really beautiful parenting, which is authoritative. I'm the boss and I guide you, but warmth always comes first.
Gotcha.
And that's you have to be warm before you can expect anything of a child. They have to be calm, their emotions have to be validated.
That is so good to
understand their experience, and then you can go, mate, I know you can pick yourself up and you can jump back in the playground and have fun, you've done so well, and we're gonna learn together how to do better at this. Or, I know school's been really tough and you don't want to go. Let's sort out how you're feeling. I'm here for you unconditionally, but I want to get you back there because school is a place that values you and you're a part of that community, and I'm going to help you learn the skills to overcome those difficult feelings that you get.
You're good at what you do.
Well, you do this naturally.
That's fantastic advice. But yes, you do, but at times you fall and at times it's varied. But to know that the right way forward, I think that's what parents appreciate hearing, that there is a correct way of handling it.
Yeah.
And that is to show that warmth. You're right, and it makes perfect sense.
Well, there's no such thing as being too sensitive. Do you know what I mean? Because with sensitivity, you can really build their strengths and build their specific skills they're struggling in. Yeah. And it just doesn't mean you just don't move forward. It just means you move forward together at the pace they need you to.
Sure.
We have got a full board. We're going to come back. If you do have a question for Dr. Billy Garvey, we'll get you on next.
This is the Fitz and Wippa with Kate Ritchie podcast.
Dr. Billy Garvey is in the studio. He's got a brand new book, 10 Things I Wish You Knew About Your Child's Mental Health. It's out now, guys. 20 years of experience as a paediatrician. Dr. Billy Garvey, can I ask about the book? It's written beautifully for parents to read and to consume. So talk to us about the book and why you've written it like this.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I've written the book is because it's so hard to access evidence-based information, and I was asked to write it about a year ago, and the book is written in a way that is hopefully really accessible information about what we do in clinic with kids, from little babies who are struggling to teenagers, coming into adulthood that are really having a difficult time, and I kind of try and step it through, but also tell a story. I don't want it to be like, oh, this is just boring and bland, and I'll pick it up tomorrow kind of thing.
Like real life scenarios.
Yeah, they're based on, there's more than 10 kids in there. They're based on these beautiful kids and families that I've met over the last 20 plus years, and it talks about like what they taught me, what I learnt from kind of journeying with them and how I use the evidence practically. It also has a lot of my story in it, because that obviously I don't separate myself. I'm in clinic, I'm still there as a parent. I've got two little kids. I had a really tough time growing up. My mum had a really tough time when I was growing up. So what I'm thinking about is like, what would I have done different? What was going on then for me? How could I have supported my mum if I had the opportunity to? Yeah. And a lot of those kids that I meet in clinic, I'm just trying to change their story a bit. And it's there's a lot of evidence about how we do that. It's just really hard to access that because it's scientific journals are pretty boring.
It's a fantastic read. Great. It really is.
Okay, Nicole's given us a call from Kellyville. Nicole, you've got Dr. Billy Garvey here.
Yeah, hi, Doctor. I was just wondering, at home it's always funny, when the kids swear and, drop the F-bomb or something, you have a bit of a giggle. But when we're out in public and it's not appropriate, how exactly should we manage that? Like, how should we help them, support them, encourage them not to do it anymore?
Good question.
Yeah, so it's really good, and it's hard, I think, because we unintentionally reinforce it and we have a bit of a giggle about it. But and the thing that's hard to learn, and I mean it took probably till my 30s to learn this, is when is like the right language in the right environments, and that's kind of what you want to guide them. It's not like a hard no, and every family's different in what they have around this, and you should be different. But how do you guide them towards what they should be doing in that environment? Instead of like, when you say no to kids about anything, it doesn't actually give them any guidance about what you want them doing. So it's a good trick to always think, what would I actually want this child doing instead? Just using language that's not going to offend anyone. And
so don't use the word no, Billy?
Yeah, well, no. The problem with no is it's quite like an aggressive word, and it puts so much emotion into whatever's happening. And often kids, especially younger kids that don't have perspective taking, which is kids under 6, 7, all they see is opposition, and they'll often push against it. And that's why we see increased behavioural and tantrums and things like that, because they go, you're not actually guiding me, you're just opposing me and standing in front of me. Even if you think yourself, if someone just comes up to you and says, stop doing that, and they get a bit emotional about it, it kind of sets off your alarm system and gets you a bit fired up. Whereas if you can go, hey, mate, like I can tell you're really excited, or I can tell you're a bit annoyed. Like, what can we do that's really helpful for that? And then thinking about what's going on for this little kid. And that's what I try and give to parents. Think about what's going on underneath this. And if they're swearing more because they're just a bit excited, or they haven't learnt it's actually not appropriate when we're out in public, or you're in the classroom, or you're at work, give them that guidance and help them learn that, and then reinforce it when they do it. Make it something achievable, a small step. Play the long game stuff.
It's like Tommy's kids calling the Wiggles shit. Now, the Wiggles, the Wiggles are not shit.
And we were so proud when Tom presented 10 other swear words that they could use instead of that. Yes. We were like, that's great, Tom. You didn't say the word no.
Well, Tom and I grew up in the same suburb, so...
Billy knows all the swear words on that side.
So that's part of our language.
You knew that by the age of 8.
Yeah, we had to work harder to know what the right thing to do was than some of you guys.
Jess is in Melrose Pass. You got a question for Dr. Billy, Jess?
I do. Hi, Dr. Billy. I was just wondering if you can give some advice on how to help my 5-year-old learn to wait her turn in conversation. She's got a lot of opinions and likes to share all of them.
Sounds like she works on this show, Jess.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I've got a gorgeous little 3-year-old that's like this, actually, and there's actually a big difference between 3 and 5. So 3-year-olds are all about the world is for me, the world is all about me, and they don't understand other people have different feelings and perspectives to them. 5-year-olds are starting to get that. So it's really important. What you do with a 3-year-old is different to what you do with a 5-year-old. What you do with a 5-year-old is you want to go, what are the actual steps that we can do? And what a lot of people will do is just say, when you want to speak, just say, excuse me.
Okay.
Take some deep breaths. Yeah. I'll acknowledge you. And then I'll finish, and then I'll go, that was so good. And at the start, sometimes it's 15 seconds. You just do 15 seconds, and then you go, Sally, that was so good that you waited. I'm so proud of you. You should feel so good. You drop down to their level, you give them heaps of attention and support, and you reinforce that they could hold the impulse. Right. And then you stretch it to 30 seconds, and then you stretch it to a minute, and then they get really good at it. The best place to learn skills is in the most supported environment and relationships, which is often at home with a parent, not on the playground or in a cafe that's noisy and busy, or the birthday party. We often try and get them to learn stuff at the birthday party, which is chaos, which is like us learning how to play footy. We've never kicked a ball, and we throw us into a grand final and go figure this out, and you just collapse and go stress, escalate. So how do we, and it's a really good question, because how do we teach kids the specific skills that we want them to learn, not get better at listening?
It is. I mean, if you can get out to 3 to 5 minutes with a kid just not saying anything,
waiting,
you're doing an amazing
like
job.
Like a dog for a snack. Gotcha.
But reinforce the behaviour you want, but slowly.
Yeah.
Yep. I love it. Let's go to Jules in Avalon. Jules, you got a question for Dr. Billy Garvey?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Dr. Billy. I've got a daughter that is anaphylactic to a bunch of things, and I'm interested in the space of environment by genetics. Do you think it's advantageous, I guess in this instance, retrospectively, to introduce highly allergenic foods as early as possible, or in fact during pregnancy? For example, I'm not a nut eater. I've just never had a taste for it. And given the fact that none of our family history has anaphylaxis, do you think that contributed to it? And how could we benefit from the thinking around that space in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. There is a really big genetic component to all allergies. We know even things like eczema and hay fever and asthma, and also food allergies. There's actually a really good national organisation called ASCIA, which has really clear guidelines for the public around this. And what we've learned through some of the research actually that was done through the Hospital and Research Institute I'm at, we used to say, like, if there's a chance it's in your family, hold off exposure to all that stuff for as long as possible. But what we found is that actually increased likelihood of allergy. So what we say now is, and you'll see that they're more specific in the guidelines than I can be here, with certain allergens, actually introducing them early decreases the chance. And it's different, obviously, if your child has had an anaphylactic reaction. Yeah, so our body, and this is a little bit of mental health as well, which is the main area of my expertise, things that are foreign to us, we get a little bit scared by them, and it's a little bit the same with our immune system. If we've never seen it, which is kind of what an allergy is, it attacks something, and so that's where our body goes through this big window in the first, really, people will say 1,000 days, which includes from conception, of learning about what the world is and what's safe and what's consistent and all those things. But ASCII is amazing. So anyone seeking any information about that, that's one of the best bodies out there and has a lot of stuff for the public online.
Yeah, thank you, Jules.
Thank
Chris,
you so much.
Thanks,
No
Jules.
worries. Sorry, Jules. Chris in Erskine Park. Question for Dr. Billy.
Yeah, g'day, Doc. I've got a question for you. My 14-year-old son, he plays rugby league. Now, at times, he gets frustrated with himself. I'm really proud that he plays with his heart on his sleeve and he gives everything every game. But what can I do to help him, not get so frustrated with things and just to help him out, sort of thing,
Chris, I have got the exact same problem at the moment. And you know what, Dr. Billy, I don't know if it's the same with you, Chris. 1 week he plays such good footy, and then the week after it's disaster zone, Dr. Billy. And it's like to the point where the whole world is coming down around him because he didn't have a good game. And I've been try to be so supportive and say to him, mate, I just love watching you out there, but nothing I say seems to be getting through to him.
Yeah, I mean, how beautiful in 2024 there's dads that are trying to think about how they can best support the emotional regulation of their sons. So that's amazing.
It's a good sign, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good sign that the world's doing some stuff well. So yeah, it's really interesting. So I was a bit the same. Like, I've got a sensitive temperament. Our temperament stays. We can pick a temperament of a kid from about 10, 11 months of age, and that stays with the rest of your life. Temperament does not change. You either are quite sensitive to big emotions, big feelings, changes your environment, have big reactions. It's 20 to 30% of us. Or you're kind of chilled about most stuff.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of those kids, they're in stressful situations. And Fitz, you got a beautiful way of saying, like, I just love watching you play.
Yeah.
But there'll be a lot of other feelings that kid is having that might feel like the weight of the game is on them. Or... the security of my self-esteem is built on being a good footy player. And so we don't take away the footy as part of their identity, but we make sure there are other things that form who they are and how they feel good about themselves, things they care about that they succeed at when they put effort in. And it can't just be one thing. And I see a lot of kids that are quite high-performing athletes that have really high levels of clinical anxiety because they feel like the weight of their relationship sits on them doing well at that.
Right.
And so they're missing skill opportunities in other things.
So how do you ease it?
So how do you ease it? You build other kind of situations and hobbies and interactions and relationships where they can also have that same feeling of success and value. You also make sure that their success and their failure are removed from who they are. It doesn't matter. So Fitzy, you will do this, but make sure when he loses the game or stuffs it up, you still say, I really enjoyed that so much. You know, but also there's all these other things I enjoy about you. Now, practically, there's another part of this. That's the big picture stuff. The little picture stuff is how you teach emotional regulation, and you teach that through co-regulation. You can do it with a 3-year-old, you can do it with a 14-year-old. How you do that is the first step is the parent or the coach or the teacher. You make sure you calm yourself first. You don't go near the kid if you're getting stressed as well, because you'll make them worse.
That is such a good piece of advice. That if you can take, and you know what, it's the same to replying to an email, Dr. Billy, at work that you fired up about.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that, so I still.
But Dr. Billy, like I felt like I'd failed the other day because I do go along and I watch the boys play footy and I get so passionate and I'm vocal there and I'm yelling out and I'm encouraging. And then Ted, my eldest, he turned around and looked at me because I'm yelling, Ted, go, go, go. He turned around and put his finger over his lips and went, shh. And I thought,
he's done the Rock. He's done the Undertaker.
And then for one, I thought he's sick of me yelling, right? That's pretty clear. But then he was quite close to the boundary line and he dropped a mark and I went, oh. And he looked at me and I thought, oh my God, he's having a moment of I've let Dad down.
Yeah,
and I just thought, oh, I've failed him in this
father
moment.
like son, yeah.
I was a great footballer. I think that's probably part of my issue. You too could be as good as me, so if you play your cards. But I thought, oh man, I've really let him down here because you are wearing your emotion on your sleeve with a lot of sporting events.
Totally, but Wippa, we're going to mess this up thousands of times. It's actually important we do, because we can then role model the recovery. We can role model that we struggle with stuff. We can role model come in and helping them lift back up, watching them lift ourselves back up. It's really important. But you make another really good point, is that often we see ourselves in our kids and we put a lot of pressure on it.
Yeah.
We can also sometimes give them the support that we thought we needed as a kid, and they're like, I'm fine. And that happens with my 3-year-old. It was beautiful little redheaded girl running around with a mop of red hair, looks almost exactly like me, a little bit too much. And often I'll be supporting her and she's like, I'm fine. And I'm just like, oh yeah, you're different to who I am, and so it's an important bit of it. But what a beautiful connection that he's able to turn to you and give you that feedback, because that shows a really healthy relationship.
Dr. Billy, can I just ask, just back onto the topic of 36 months, I'd just like to talk a little bit further, because, since launching the initiative, we're also gaining so much information, and we're learning, and we're gaining a hell of a lot of knowledge. But when you talk about development, and that's why we've been particular about that 36 months, when you talk about mental development, a lot of the reading is around that prefrontal cortex. And, Maggie Dent also talks beautifully about how we develop from sort of the ground up, and the prefrontal cortex sits at the top, and that's the part that regulates emotion and decision making, and that's why it's such a vulnerable time of your early teenage years.
Yeah, our prefrontal cortex, it actually looks like it might even be late 20s, but we've known for a while.
Late 20s, it finishes
mid-20s,
developing.
Yeah. So that's kind of where... So people used to think like emotions are inferior because they mess up logic, but what we've found actually is they work in sync. Like our emotions inform how we feel about things, and and what we know is that kids, especially through the teenage years, get flooded with a lot of hormonal imbalance that means that they're quite vulnerable to having feelings that completely overwhelm them.
Yes.
It's a bit the same as what we talked about, the toddler that, thinks the whole world is around them. There's a great vulnerability in self-esteem and emotional regulation that happens in the teenage years, because really what that is about practicing being adults with a safety net.
Yeah.
Now, your point is a really good one, because what we know is that it's harder as parents to have a safety net around kids that are having a community online. And a lot of that, I don't know about you guys, but the hardest thing I find, and I've got young kids, is role modelling is such a big part of this.
Yeah.
And how do I role model healthy behaviours around that? And it's tough. Like, I've got an 11-month-old who sees the phone in the room and goes straight for it and picks it up, because I pick it up all the time. It's not a toy. He gets nothing out of it. It's just what Dad does. So, and we know that happens as well. If we engage in social media platforms all the time, our kids are watching us and going, Dad's on this all the time, Mum's on this all the time. They get a lot of joy out of it. They get a lot of frustration out of it. It's a big source of their daily activity. And then you go, oh, God, and now my teenager's struggling with it. So what we want to make sure a big part of what we're doing, regardless of age,
such a good point.
Is role modelling healthy behaviours. And how do we... Do you know the most important bit with all this is, how do I make sure they feel that they can unconditionally always come to me? That's because stuff will happen regardless of age that we might not know about. And we want to make sure no matter what happens, even if they've been the person that's done something wrong, they feel like the first step we'll do is validate them and support them.
Because let's say until we change the law and we're able to make some advances here and sort of protect our kids from social media, I suppose, till they're an age where they at least have some understanding of what to expect and able to build some resilience and regulate their emotion when they do, or if they do join the social media platform. This is a huge question. But if there is continuous bullying, which can result in worst case scenarios, then what is the technique as a parent to deal with that?
Yeah, so we see this a lot, Wippa. Like, there's a lot of kids.
It's such a big topic.
No, but there's a lot of kids that are experiencing horrific, like, online bullying, and not going to school, and they might be, and I'm sure you guys will put out some information of support, but they might be self-harming, or they might not be wanting to live anymore. And we this is like suicide is the biggest killer in this country from 14 to 44 years of age. That's like horrific.
And the numbers we read recently were there was a 275% increase of young teenage girls admitted to hospital with self-harm over the past few years.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well. Like, there's a big increase in kids that are really struggling with this stuff, and I think a contributor to it is unsafe environments everywhere where there's not enough visibility on what experience they're having. And that's why I push back against this idea of just free-range parenting. Like, when we grew up, we just, the sun came up and we were gone. Parents never saw us until the streetlights came on. Mental illness in adults is horrific. Like, it's not like that was some idealised.
Right. We didn't nail it, did we?
Yeah, we didn't nail it. Totally.
No one thinks about that.
No. Everyone, romanticizes what it was like. And I was dancing, I was playing with a baby fawn, and we were,
we were in the field till the sun went down. We'll have a look at us.
Yeah, think about some of the, especially Tom and I, the stuff that we,
Frankston train station.
Oh,
you don't want
station.
to start touching any fawns
Tom
around
used
there.
to tag that station regularly.
My God.
Yeah, so it's hard. So how do we have visibility of what's going on? And we have that by creating safe spaces for them to have conversations with us, especially in teenagers. The funny thing about teenagers is they get a phase shift in their sleep. So often they want to come and speak to us late at night when we're winding down.
So why is that?
So they phase shift their sleep. Their sleep trigger comes later. So often when they feel like they're kind of most active and comfortable in their safest environment at home is in the evening after the heat of school has settled down and they're still quite alert.
Isn't that interesting?
And as a parent, you're like, cool, I survived that day. Gonna sit on the couch, and then your kid comes over and goes, I need to talk to you about something.
You're bombarded, gotcha.
But it's, you're doing this beautifully, Wippa. If you've got a kid that's on a footy ground and can turn to you and, say, shush, calm down, he feels safe coming to you. He experiences bullying online or something bad happens on social media or he sees content that he shouldn't. You just want to make sure he comes to you.
Yep.
But, you don't build that by saying to them, hey, always know you can come to me, okay, mate? Yeah. You do that by showing every single time they come to you about anything, your first step is support and validation.
Yep.
From a young age. And it doesn't mean it's lost. If you've got a 17-year-old that refuses to talk to you now and you're listening and going, I'm doomed, I'm stuffed, you're not. The beautiful evidence around attachment, which is what we're actually talking about, secure attachment and belonging, is that you can recover it. You can always recover it.
Yep.
You do that by consistent, predictable, responsive, unconditional love. And you just work on that. And if you're going to work on only a single thing as a parent, work on that. Drop the vegetables, drop the homework, drop everything and say, Dr. Billy said, if you're getting in trouble anywhere, and say, this is what we're working on. We're working on our relationship. And you've got to make sure that 99% of the time you interact with kids, you're not hassling them about something. Okay. Because that's how they know they're valued and you experience joy when you're with them, and make sure you do that consistently. And I'm talking like multiple times a week. And for people out there that are like, I got to work, I got to do this, I got no family around my kids, and both myself and my partner work really long shifts. We don't see our kids much. It's the quality of time.
Sure.
It's what you do with that time you have with them, not hours and hours.
Consistency of love. I'm going to get that tattooed on my chest. Consistency of love.
Dr. Billy Garvey, we could speak to you all morning, but if you would like more information and you think your child or as a parent, you need more information on this stuff, his brand new book, 10 Things I Wish You Knew About Your Child's Mental Health. It's out now. Appreciate your time, Dr. Bill. Thank you very much for coming in, buddy.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Billy.
Fitz in Wippa with Kate Ritchie is a Nova podcast. For more great shows like this, download the Nova Player via the App Store or Google Play.
The Nova Player.